If I really start this story from the beginning, it started with a handshake not with her, but with her husband Greg. I was invited to an interview at his recruiting firm, and when we were introduced and shook hands, I knew I would be working with him. It was an intuitive feeling. 2 hours later, I was offered the position of vice president. I started work the next week. It's true, and this is my story. When I arrived for my first day of work, I was pleasantly surprised by the greetings from the office staff and the boss's wife. She was about 45 years old, about 165 centimeters tall, with a well-groomed figure, proportionate breasts, a toned body, a neat ass, slender legs, and a bright smile. To put it mildly, she was extremely attractive. Over the next few weeks, as I settled into my new position, I had many opportunities to spend time with her. For convenience, let's call her Gail. There were times when we found ourselves physically close to each other, which, in retrospect, was probably awkward for both of us. We were both aware of the mutual attraction and sexual tension. I, I'm 46 years old, about 183 centimeters tall, and I try to stay in shape by going to the gym once a week and playing golf regularly. Sometimes I have to give up big dinners and spend more time in the gym. I divorced my wife about 3 years ago and decided that I needed to change my personal life. So I quit my job and moved to a place where I didn't know anyone. After 3 months of searching, I finally found a job. Returning to Gail. Our first real physical contact happened in public at a Memorial Day party at their house. She hugged me warmly, and I returned the hug. Her body pressed completely against mine, and I felt the results of her regular training and the softness of everything else. I reacted like any other healthy American man. I started to get aroused almost immediately and pulled away to avoid embarrassment. She looked into my face, caught my gaze with her almost black eyes, smiled with something like an invitation, and left. I have seen a lot of life and recognized some of the signals it gave. I had no doubt that she did this deliberately. I like to flirt, but what she did was more like a challenge. I tried to make sure that the next time I saw her that day would be my moment of goodbye and gratitude. The following week, on Saturday around 6:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was Gail, and she was clearly drunk. She cried because of a quarrel with Greg, told how she tried to please him, and how it seemed to her that he no longer loved her. I talked to her for about an hour, calming her down until she came to her senses. I asked if she was okay, and she said yes and thanked me. At the end, she said that she was glad that she had a friend like me. Then she added, "How is it that some lucky woman hasn't gotten her hands on you yet?" I was married twice, both times unsuccessfully. So now I'm just enjoying my alone time. I like living alone. I have a wonderful home, plenty of help and company if I need it. She laughed. "I'm sure you have a queue. Thank you again," and hung up. I didn't see or talk to Gail for almost 2 months after that. Then one evening the phone rang. She was drunk and in their cabin in the mountains. Her husband was at their other house. I found out they were fighting again, and I didn't want to be the referee in the relationship between my boss and his wife. But given who I am and what position I hold, we again repeated approximately the same conversation as the first time. "You calm me down so well and help me look at everything more soberly. Why are you doing this for me?" she asked. "Well, I treat you both as friends. If I can help smooth things over, I'm willing to try by listening. Besides, for the money I spent to find myself, the world, and you, I can at least share it. Is he talking to you about this?" "No, nothing personal." "Okay then," and she hung up. It's weird and getting weirder. She came into the office about once a week and always made sure to check on me. Each time it started with a hug that got longer and longer, not that I was complaining. She often closed the door to ease her soul. Each time it was an apology for her calls or actions. I laughed it off and suggested we forget it. During this time, she sometimes called to talk. Each time the topic concerned her problems, she was looking for advice or simply needed a listener. Each time she was sober. The next time she called drunk was 2 months later. This time the conversation went from weird to sexy to weird again and back to sexy. This new level was something completely new. Although the conversation was quite low-key for phone sex, she talked about how beautiful my lips were, that she thought I was a great cook, that I had an attractive body, and stuff like that. She sounded both embarrassed and eager. At the end, she unexpectedly admitted, "I love you, but not in this sense." Despite this new level of openness and her acceptance, I tried to put it out of my mind. She was drunk after all. But 2 weeks later, she called again. Her husband was away with their eldest son for the weekend, and the youngest was at boarding school. She was left alone for the weekend. When the call rang, I already knew in my heart that it would be her. This time she cried. I can't stand it when women cry. There is no man in the world who would not feel at least a little helpless in such a situation. She began to speak quietly, almost in a whisper, choked voice, but the subject was far from modest, and her words were a little confused. "I'm just spending time with myself, you know." She hesitated, as if trying to find the right words. Today was a difficult day, and I needed to find a way to relax a little and feel a little more alive, let's say. "What's going on here, Gail?" I felt confused by her words. "I just needed to feel like a woman," she admitted, sighing slightly. "I needed a way to relieve tension, if only for a moment. And yes, I found such a way. Of course, it's not the same as if someone was nearby, but sometimes you have to cope on your own," she chuckled, trying to make the conversation easy. I realized that we were in dangerous territory. "I think I'd better not know, Gail. I want you to know. I trust you to keep this a secret. I love you, but not in this sense." "Then how?" I asked. She ignored the question. "Where are you now?" "At home." "One?" "Yes." "Take off my clothes." "Come on, join us." "Gail, no." I tried to be as restrained as possible, but decisive. "Why not? I'm sure you were thinking about me. I imagined you. You're probably already excited, thinking about what I'm doing now. But let me tell you anyway, I'm lying here on the bed, feeling free and relaxed. Can you imagine it? I see my reflection in the mirror opposite the bed, and I experience strong feelings. Look, we shouldn't do this. As much as you should, and even more if I dared. Now imagine that we are together." "No." She stopped abruptly, and the next minute it seemed to me that she was about to burst into tears again. But instead, I heard her loud scream, full of pleasure. "That's the seventh time. Finally." Then she hung up. About an hour later, she called again. "You have a new task. Leave work tomorrow at lunchtime. There is a folder on my desk. You have the key to my office, I know it. Bring her to the ranch. Do you think you can handle it?" I wasn't sure I wanted to do this, but she didn't ask for my consent. "Okay, see you tomorrow." I told the staff that I would be out for lunch and went to the ranch, which was 27 kilometers from the office. It sat on 14 acres on a hill with panoramic views of the valley below. The nearest neighbor was almost a kilometer away. When I knocked on the door, I heard a thud, the sound of breaking glass, and then silence. "Gail, are you there?" No answer. I turned the handle. The door was not locked. I opened the door and saw Gail stretched out on the floor among the broken pieces of a wine bottle. It spilled, and her robe soaked up the dark red liquid. I rushed to her to check if she was okay. She was unconscious. I pulled her away from the fragments, picked her up, and her robe fell open. Underneath, she was wearing only a sheer bra and matching sheer panties. I carefully carried her to the bathroom, sat her down on a chair, and began to wipe the wine from her face, neck, and chest. Then I took off my dressing gown to see if there were any more stains on her and put her in bed under the covers. Her body was gorgeous, and I could hardly resist the urge to look at it longer. I went to get a towel and then spent half an hour cleaning up the hallway where the bottle had been broken. I threw the robe and towel into the washing machine to prevent the stains from setting in. Then I put on the coffee, checked on her a couple of times. She was still sleeping and sat down to think about what to do next. Her condition did not seem dangerous. There were no bruises on her head, and I decided that there was no serious injury. With a mug of coffee, I went out onto the veranda, furnished with comfortable armchairs and sofas, and began to think. But she made the decision for me. I heard a rustle and turned around. She stepped out onto the veranda, dressed in a clean robe and holding a cup of coffee in her hands. Her face was washed, her hair was combed, and even without makeup, she looked beautiful. It was noticeable that she was a little embarrassed. "Did you put me to bed?" "Yes, and at the same time I cleaned the hallway. Wash your robe and towel to prevent the wine from leaving stains. And the folder is on the kitchen table." "Thank you. You've probably seen." "Everything you've seen, right?" She blushed slightly. "If you mean I saw you in your underwear, then honestly I had no choice but to leave the robe on. It's probably quite frank, right?" "Yes, but it looks good on you. You look great. I probably shouldn't have said that." "It's okay, thank you. I like to feel feminine and sexy, even if no one sees it." She fell silent, and I decided not to say anything so as not to aggravate the situation. "I really want to thank you for your help today, for your ability to keep everything a secret. You are a truly good person, and I don't know how we would cope as a company without you. You have become indispensable to us, especially to me. But it's probably time for you. Are you sure you can handle it?" "Everything is fine. Coffee helped relieve the headache a little. Besides, Greg will be here soon, in an hour or so." When I got up to leave, she came up and hugged me tightly, pressing her whole body against me, and kissed me on the cheek. "Thank you for remaining a gentleman," she whispered in my ear. After that, everything seemed to calm down. We hardly saw each other and rarely communicated. But apparently, one of the days turned out to be difficult for her, because at about 10 p.m. the bell rang. This time she sounded sober. "You have a new task. Leave work early tomorrow. Tell Mandy you have an appointment at the bank to set up a new line of credit. Go to Victoria's Secret at the West Mall. I'll meet you there at 4. Don't be late." And she hung up without even letting me answer. Well, it's not that scary, I thought. This is a public place after all. How wrong I was. The next day I arrived at Victoria's Secret at exactly 4 o'clock. Gail was already there and holding several things in her hands. Seeing me, she smiled and with a slight movement of her head indicated that I should follow her. She walked deeper into the store and then into the fitting room, opened one of the booths and quickly pushed me inside. The booth was small. There was barely enough room for the two of us to stand because of the bench. She hung the items she had chosen on a hook and turned to me. "I need your opinion on these things," she whispered. "Okay," I answered, sitting down on the bench, trying to stay calm. What happened next took me by surprise. She began to slowly unbutton her blouse, looking me straight in the eyes. Her movements were not hasty, deliberately sexual. When she took it off and hung it on the hook, I saw that there was nothing underneath. "Do you like what you see?" she asked with a smile. "You've already seen me almost naked, remember?" I stood silently looking at her, not knowing what to say. The words got stuck somewhere in my throat, and my head seemed to turn off, giving way to a strange, alarming silence. She looked at me with a slight smile that conveyed both confidence and expectation. Slowly, as if giving me time to process what was happening, she reached down to the waistband of her skirt. The sound of the clasp being unfastened broke the tense silence, and a moment later the skirt gently slid down, falling at her feet. She stood before me, graceful, with a posture in which there was so much freedom and calm confidence that I could not look away. Her body looked like the epitome of perfection. The skin, golden from the tan, caught the light and seemed to glow from within. She straightened up, raised her hands behind her head, and slowly bent over, as if dancing. Then, slowly, she made a full turn, giving me the opportunity to see every detail of her refined silhouette. All her movements were smooth, graceful, like a dancer's, and there was not a drop of embarrassment in this gesture, only naturalness and inner harmony. "Do you like it?" she asked as she stopped in front of me again. Her voice sounded soft but confident, as if she already knew the answer. I tried to find words, but all I could say was simple. Yes. My condition did not remain a secret to her. She smiled a little wider, reaching out and touching me lightly, as if testing my reaction. Her gesture was cautious, but there was a slight play in it. I felt her touch trigger a surge of emotion, but before it overcame me, I gently took her hand, stopping her movement. We stood opposite each other, not saying a word, but the moment seemed filled with something that didn't need explanation. Just checking. I wanted to make sure you weren't lying. She continued this. I reached out to squeeze her breast, and she pushed my hand away. Look, but don't touch. She reached out, took her nightgown off the hook, and threw it over her head. After examining herself in the mirror, she turned to me. Well, what do you think? Frank and sensual. Okay, I'll buy this. She took it off and tried on the next one, then the next one, and the next one. Each time she modeled for me, they became more skimpy and revealing. The latter was transparent and left nothing to the imagination. After I took this one off, she calmly pulled on her blouse and skirt, adjusted herself in front of the mirror, and opened the door. I still had a huge tent in my pants. She went out, went to the cash register, and paid for her purchases. About 5 minutes later, I followed her and noticed she was gone. I just went to my car and drove home. 2 days later, on Friday, she called again. You know where the Valley Inn Spa is, the clothing optional resort. I'll text you the room number. Be there tomorrow. Look, Gail, are you sure about this? Because I'm not. When I hugged you, I felt how excited you were. I was sure then. When I grabbed you at Victoria's Secret, I confirmed that you are a good size, and I want it all. If you are as good in bed as you are in company, I will be a very happy woman, and you, as a result, will be a very satisfied man. Do you have a problem with this? Will I get a say in this? Not if you like working there. Why spa? Because I'll be there all day anyway. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. Dumb answer, but all I could think of. She had already hung up. Well, I think I was up to my neck in it. She was bossy and stubborn, and I needed this job. So I accepted everything I had to do, but was determined to limit it to just this one time. I went and bought a newspaper and started looking for another job. As directed, and at the appointed time, I went to the spa. There was a message on my phone from her with the number 101 and instructions on where to park and how to get to the room, so I wouldn't have to walk through the lobby. I parked as directed and walked through the garden gate, which was closed but not locked. As soon as I finished, I realized that I was overdressed. I was the only one wearing clothes among about 35 people, all in varying degrees of relaxation, sunbathing, getting a massage, or something like that. I ignored the stairs and walked into the room as casually as possible. The door was slightly open, and I heard Gail say, "Come in, I saw you come. I'll come out now." I entered the room and closed the door. The room was more like a large suite in a 5-star hotel. It had its own living room with a bar and 40-inch LCD TV, as well as double doors leading to the bedroom. I could see the shower running. Damn it, I walked into the bathroom and saw Gail taking a shower. I looked at her as if frozen in the moment. Thin streams of water flowed down her skin, giving her body an extraordinary shine. Her figure looked like a work of art. Every line, every curve perfectly emphasized her natural grace. She was completely lost in thought and did not seem to notice my presence. Her movements were light, relaxed, like those of a person accustomed to being free. At some point, she reached for a bottle of shampoo, bending down, and I involuntarily admired her smooth lines. It was a moment that seemed frozen in time. I found myself not wanting to stay away. The idea to act came instantly and seemed natural. I took off my clothes and stepped into the shower, deciding that this moment was not meant to be observed, but to be a part of it. She shuddered slightly when she noticed me, but instead of surprise, a slight smile lit up her face. "I love confident people," she said calmly, but with a playful note in her voice. "Why don't you join?" Her voice sounded warm and bewitching. There was not a drop of embarrassment in this phrase, only confidence and goodwill. I smiled back, and a kind of ease was established between us, as if we had known each other for a long time. We stood under the warm streams of water, talking. Her laughter sounded like a melody, and her gaze was so lively and open that I almost forgot about everything around me. Every gesture, every movement seemed natural, but at the same time somehow magical. At some point, I turned off the shower, picked her up, and carried her into the room. She hugged me around the neck and said, laughing, "I didn't expect such a turn, but I like it." Her voice sounded so soft and trusting that I felt my heart stop for a moment. She lay down on the bed, slightly pulling me along with her. Her hair spread across the pillow, and her face lit up with a warm, genuine smile. "You are confident in yourself. It's immediately noticeable," she said with a slight slyness. "But something tells me that you can surprise me." She stretched out on the bed, clasped her hands behind her head, and looked at me with a look full of mixed challenge and amusement. There was something mesmerizing about her confidence. She was a person who didn't just live in the moment, but enjoyed every moment of it. I sat down next to her, slowly extended my hand, and she, catching my gesture, easily intertwined her fingers with mine. This moment was full of invisible but tangible energy that seemed to surround us, making us forget about everything except what was happening here and now. We talked, laughed, and every moment seemed something special. There was not a drop of doubt in her words and gestures, only openness and joy. This moment was not just a meeting between two people, but something more, a moment that felt real, sincere, and unforgettable. I walked over to the bed, gently grabbed her ankles, and gently pulled her closer, spreading her legs over my shoulders. Slowly, I leaned forward, teasing her with my proximity until she, unable to resist, pulled me towards her with a strong movement of her legs. We were very close, our bodies were completely touching. She whispered passionately, encouraging me not to stop, to move deeper, to immerse myself in this moment. I responded to her energy by moving confidently but with restraint. Our rhythms synchronized, creating a single pulsating flow. Every touch, every gesture caused her a storm of emotions. She pressed herself harder and harder into me. Her voice became more and more hoarse from overwhelming feelings. At that moment, everything around me seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us, completely absorbed in each other. We both enjoyed feeling an amazing unity, as if all boundaries had dissolved. It was a moment of absolute trust and intimacy that will remain in the memory for a long time. After a few minutes, while I was still completely relaxed, she began working my muscles again. Surprisingly, I felt a surge of energy and warmth, as if something was awakening again. She stood up and gently rolled me onto my back. "Now it's my turn, cowboy," she said with a smile. She settled herself into a position where she felt confident and began to move, finding a rhythm that suited both of us. Each time she stood up, she made a quiet sound of delight and returned with more confidence. At some point, she leaned over and took my hands, pressing them to her chest. "Help me," she whispered, as if telling me what to do. I responded, trying to be gentle while still responding to her energy. She continued to move, becoming more and more passionate, until finally she stopped, as if she had reached the peak of her sensations. She lay down next to me, curled up, and, resting, ran her hand over my shoulder, as if thanking me for this moment. Her breathing gradually became calm, and a slight smile appeared on her face. We just lay next to each other, enjoying the silence and closeness. I lay there and tried to figure everything out. I just had the best sex I've ever had with someone else's wife, who was also my boss. She interrupted me. "So what do you think? Was it as good as I thought it was? Because I've never had so much fun." "It was just incredible. Want to get used to having this piece of ass whenever you want. I am so amazed by your endurance that I cannot express my gratitude. My husband lasts about 3 minutes when I get so crazy, and my two other relationships didn't last long. And your predecessor was a weakling, he didn't even show up for a date. What do I need to do to make you want to continue this with me? I will do anything you want, and I mean anything. Just have sex with me like this, and I'll be yours any way you want." "Are you saying that you want to be my sex slave? It's pretty radical." "I will be your slave, your prostitute, your slut, anything, as long as you regularly have sex with me like you just did. Do you want a promotion? It's yours. More privileges? Just ask. Just don't leave me now. You destroyed me. The only thing I won't do is divorce my husband." I thought quickly. "Fine. Let's draw up a new contract for me at the company to give me a promotion and additional benefits, including a golden parachute in case you suddenly want to get rid of me. We agreed, do it, I'll sign it. I'll deal with Greg and HR myself. Anything covers a pretty wide spectrum. I was hoping you had a good imagination to complement that magnificent size, she said as she began to play with him again. I felt something special flare up between us again, something that words cannot describe. Her touches were gentle, but at the same time they felt inner confidence and easy play. She looked at me with a long, expressive gaze, and I understood. Now there is something more going on between us than just physical intimacy. I want to try something new, she began, her voice soft, almost a whisper. But I only have 3 requests. No experiments that might cause pain, no situations that might embarrass me in public, and please keep this just between us. If you are ready to accept this, I want to trust you. To trust as I have never trusted anyone before. Her words sounded so sincere that it took my breath away. At that moment, I realized that she was opening doors for me not only into her world, but also into the very depths of her soul. I pulled her closer, and we merged in a kiss full of passion and tenderness. It seemed that everything around had disappeared, leaving only the two of us at that moment. I felt the warmth of her body, her breath on my skin, and there was something truly magical about it. The outburst of emotions was so strong that we seemed to dissolve into each other. We moved in unison, understanding each other without words. Every gesture, every movement seemed natural, as if our bodies spoke a language that no one taught us, but which we both knew instinctively. She allowed herself to relax and trust me completely. Her look said more than words. She was ready to go towards the unknown, but only if I was nearby. And I wanted her to know that I am here to support, to be someone who will always be there for her. As we lay next to each other, exhausted, I felt her fingers slowly drawing invisible patterns on my chest. Her breathing was even, and her eyes shone with peace. Now everything will be different, she said quietly, raising her head slightly and looking at me with a soft smile. You discovered something new in me that I didn't even suspect, and I want this to stay between us. This is our small but very important discovery. Her words warmed my heart. We didn't just spend time together, we became closer than ever before. This night was the beginning of something special, something that will forever remain only ours. As our relationship grew into a shared desire to have sex as often as possible and fulfill her fantasies, I began to think about how to protect myself in case everything turned against me. As it turned out, she didn't need much persuasion. This is a true story, and it is mine. Now I'm yours. You own me, and you can use me however you want, for anything or with whoever you want. Before you, only one other person had had sex with me in any other way, but that was a long time ago, long before I met Greg, and I was too young to understand what I was doing. Now it's yours at your discretion. That's what she said as she fell asleep, curled up next to me. I had just had an experience with the most uninhibited woman of my life. She was clearly hungry for sex. She had sex with wild passion and wanted as much as possible. I've heard of women like this, but I've never met them before. The danger was obvious. She was my boss and another man's wife. I wasn't sure I should care. Apparently, she didn't care. But I had to be careful and make sure I had enough information and evidence so that she couldn't use everything we did against me. As I lay there, I devised a plan that would allow her to fulfill her desires to expand her sexual experience and fulfill her fantasies, while providing me with irrefutable evidence of her voluntary participation if necessary. It was a cold calculation, but I always prepared for the worst and was glad when it did not come. This is called survival. I decided that I needed to take Gail on an adventure that would become increasingly daring. For example, start with nude photos in nature, then show her in a public place, and maybe even have sex. Then move on to having sex with, shall we say, nasty people I knew in New York, and finally to a huge sex party that I was sure she would find pleasure in. I had friends in the entertainment and pleasure industry who could provide actors to maintain her sexual appetite and satisfy her desire for rough and frequent sex. And I recently purchased a set of electronics, most of which I installed in my home to provide irrefutable evidence of her consent to such entertainment. As I fell asleep, I thanked my luck for the possibility of incredible sex and the means to guarantee its availability. I woke up to Gail happily pleasuring me. I thought, why not start her journey right now? Have you ever thought about having sex in front of other people, some of whom might even be inspired to participate? You mean something like partners swapping or sex with multiple men at the same time? I think it's a logical next step after you've been naked in public. Well, judge for yourself. If people have already seen everything, what difference does it make? I often thought how interesting it would be, but I never found a partner who would agree to it. Why are you asking? Have you ever tried this yourself? In my travels, I met a variety of people, some more liberated in terms of sex, others less so. But they were all quite open to such topics. And yes, I often participated in situations with different partners. Sometimes they were private homes and sometimes clubs. I think you might like it, and I would be glad to introduce you to this lifestyle when you are properly prepared. Prepared, does this mean that I have just, or will soon, have my mind blown from sex? I'm ready now. You can take it that way, but no, that's not exactly what I meant. This lifestyle has its own rules and social norms that exist to protect the participants not only physically, but also emotionally. Physically sharing your husband, wife, or partner with someone else is not something we were taught was acceptable. Many people quit because they find it difficult to adapt to these rules and regulations. Some people quit because they realize they started it for the wrong reasons, and some are disappointed because what they wanted to achieve did not produce the expected effect. I don't understand what you mean by did not give the expected effect. You see, many people just want to blow their minds out from sex or realize repressed fantasies. But surprisingly, many couples get into this lifestyle to try new sexual partners or simply to watch other people have sex, all for the sake of sharing your sexual appetites or adding spice to your life. It takes very strong relationships and incredible maturity to make it work. Often this ends badly quarrels, betrayals, or a complete breakup. By betrayal, this is nonsense. Don't they understand what happens when someone else has sex with their wife or husband? You think in stereotypes. Different social norms apply here. Let me give you an example. A husband and wife go to a party, knowing that there will be an exchange of partners, and so on. A husband watches his wife have sex with 3 men, and then his wife watches him have sex with 3 women. This is not cheating, it is acceptable because both knew about it and agreed in advance. No surprises or secrets. But if 2 days later a woman meets one of those men in a hotel at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they have a mini party there without her husband's knowledge, this is cheating. Because none of the spouses knew or approved of this. Ah, now it's clear. If the spouse knows, this is not treason. If he does not know, it is treason. Logical. So what I'm doing now is cheating because Greg doesn't know that I'm giving you pleasure. Tell me another rule. Fine. No always means no. At a party, no matter how dressed or undressed someone is, if you want to touch someone or even just enter their personal space, you have to ask permission. If you want to do something, you must get the person's consent. If the answer is yes, then you limit yourself to what he agreed to and do not move on to anything else without permission or explicit encouragement. If the answer is no, then that's it, that's where it ends. I have seen people and couples kicked out for breaking this rule. It's like insurance, right? Yes, it allows everyone to relax and worry less about satisfying their sexual desires right here and now. Late nights or all-night parties can be quite intense, but the people who go there have usually been in this lifestyle for a long time and know each other well. Many communicate privately between events. Can I just go and look and stay fully dressed? Newbies often do this at their first party. They delve into their voyeuristic side. This is an internal process that does not affect anyone else. If they get over it, they usually move on to getting naked and even having sex in public with their partner, and much later to the exchange of partners. I think I'd like to try something like that. I'm pretty sure you will, as part of fulfilling your fantasies. But let's first lower your inhibitions before entering into this lifestyle. Being comfortable naked and having sex in front of or with strangers is a little different. This confidence in public sex is an important part of comfort in these encounters. She laughed. Is it a joke? I don't have many inhibitions. I think there are still a couple. For example, what about sex in public? I've already been naked in public, remember, at the spa? Of course, but this is a controlled environment. How about having sex in a park, on the beach, or even in a parking lot in broad daylight? She looked at me for a long time, trying to understand if I was serious. Are you kidding me? You can be arrested for this. Now I started laughing. Do you see? Isn't this a challenge, and maybe even an excitement? People have sex in public either to enjoy the risk of getting caught or because they are simply exhibitionists and want to be seen. Either way, it turns them on, and that's the whole point. It sounds not only mischievous, but also like a challenge. Careful, I can agree. You can take it however you want, but the fact is that I think you should try it a couple of times to get used to the idea and see if you like it. Fine. Okay, is that all? No objections? Just okay? You know I'm ready for almost anything that doesn't involve pain, shame from my family, or the threat of divorce. I'm not sure about public sex, but why not try something like exhibitionism, just not where we might be recognized? How do you feel about me capturing this on camera? Depends on where the photos or videos end up. I must have all copies and sources. I trust you, but I know how cunning you are sometimes. Okay, I replied almost immediately. Okay, is that all? No bargaining, no persuasion, just okay? Hey, this is for you, not me, so why not? You want something a little different. It'll be great to take a few photos, then look at them together, and they're yours to either keep or destroy. What will you tell me? If it's really fun and they turn out great, maybe you can just squeeze it out of me later. Sounds like a challenge or a plan. I don't even know what's more. No, this is a promise. Just for the two of us, baby, casual, wild and physically exhausting sex until you completely pass out. And so, without much effort, I cast the bait because I had a secret that she didn't know about. When I download a photo from a digital camera, my computer automatically creates two copies, one on a local drive and one on a backup server hidden in the closet. So when are we going on this little adventure? The girl needs to get ready. We need to find something suitable not to wear. Let's plan this for next week when we have a conference. Greg will be up the coast, and we can turn the meeting into our mini vacation. We won't be home the whole time anyway. I like this idea. Let's take your SUV and enjoy the road. Great idea. In the meantime, I'll prepare my camera equipment. When we get back, we'll upload everything here and see what happens. Plus, we can practice a little on the way. Practice? What will that look like? It's simple. You do what you want, I take pictures, and then we look at them together and have fun. I see. Okay, I'm in. But you've already turned me on just by the thought of all this. So come here, stud. Mom wants to have sex with you. She reached out to me, our eyes met, and the tension between us became palpable. We were closer than we expected, and everything happened so naturally. I felt the warmth of her touch as she confidently pulled me closer. Her movements were smooth and sensual. We synchronized in this dance of emotions. Our every gesture spoke more than words. When she was nearby, I felt her energy literally envelop me. We moved together, becoming more and more captivated by this moment. She sat down next to me, smiling, clearly pleased with our feelings and closeness. After that, we hugged each other, enjoying each other's warmth, feeling the overwhelming joy that brought peace. Her quiet whispers about how wonderful it was to be so open with each other made me proud that we had such a connection. You can get used to it, she said with a sly smile. Damn, I need to wash up and get home. Can I use your shower, or do I have to go to the gym? The bathroom is clean, the towels are fresh in the closet. Enjoy yourself. I love men who are always ready, she said as she left. She didn't linger in the bathroom and soon came out, fully dressed and ready. Without another word, she walked out the door. Public flashing and much more. I would never have believed that she was so sexy and relaxed. Even she herself was surprised at what kind of girl of easy virtue she could be. This is a true story, and it is mine. As we approached the city mall, I noticed how well lit it was. The camera was capable of taking high-resolution pictures in low light, so I put the flash in my pocket. It was not my intention to attract too much attention and cause Gail to give up on the idea. She was a little nervous, so I patted her hand as we entered through the back door on the first floor. Considering the time of day, there weren't that many people walking around. It was good. This seemed to cheer her up a little. Not too many people. It makes me feel a little better. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous and very excited about the prospect of what we're doing here. Do you think this outfit is too revealing? I'm not sure I'd call it a revelation, more like nothing at all. She was wearing a short pleated skirt that, when she bent over, exposed everything she had. To complete her look, she wore sandals and a cropped t-shirt that showed off her flat stomach below her belly button. On top of all this, she was wearing a light raincoat that reached her knees. I noticed her neck was a little red, and I could tell she was breathing a little hard. "I don't know," I said. I leaned over to her and rubbed my hand over her ass. "But you're the hottest thing I've ever seen. Let's take a photo." All she did was smile, hand me my coat, and walk away. I followed her at some distance, trying not to attract attention. She moved with amazing ease, as if completely lost in her thoughts or mood. Periodically, she stopped to correct something or inspect something, and her every gesture looked incredibly natural. It was obvious that she was enjoying the moment. I took a few photos to capture her carefree state. The photographs showed her light, relaxed style, which created an atmosphere of something sincere and alive. We continued our walk through the shopping center. Sometimes she seemed to deliberately stop and sit down to adjust her bag or tie her shoelaces, but her movements were so confident and relaxed that they could easily become the basis for a portrait. She looked like she was truly enjoying herself, her look, and the moment. As we approached the seating area outside the store, she pretended to accidentally drop something on the floor and bent down to pick it up. This movement showed her sense of humor and the ease with which she dealt with what was happening. She turned around and threw a playful glance at me, as if asking, "Did you notice everything?" I could barely contain my smile and took a few more pictures. Her confidence grew. She stretched slightly, straightened her back, and raised her hands to straighten her t-shirt, which inadvertently rose slightly, exposing her waistline. This gesture looked so natural and unostentatious that it seemed she was doing it without noticing. Her smile, directed in my direction, said more than words. We walked out of the shopping center onto the street. People turned to look at her, some smiled, some whispered. She seemed to feel this attention, but was not embarrassed, but on the contrary, as if she drew energy from it. It was obvious that she was enjoying what was happening, while remaining within the framework of an easy, unobtrusive game with the outside world. In the parking lot, she stopped by a car and opened the trunk to check something. Her movements remained just as confident and smooth. She leaned slightly, which looked natural and relaxed. She then closed the trunk and walked to the passenger door to open it. At some point, she stopped and smiled and looked at me. I also captured this moment because her gaze was filled with joy and some special light. Once she got into the car, she relaxed and looked at me with a wide smile. Her mood seemed to have reached its peak. She exhaled, brushing her hair out of her face, and said, "It was incredible. You know, I think sometimes you need to allow yourself to be a little freer. It's a feeling of some kind of inner lightness. Thank you for this walk." I slowly approached her, feeling my heart beat a little faster with anticipation. She looked up, her gaze filled with a mixture of embarrassment and confidence. She seemed to be considering every move, but at the same time enjoying the moment. Everything around me suddenly lost meaning, as if the world had stopped, leaving us alone in this little bubble of spontaneity. I took out my camera and took a couple of pictures, trying to catch the play of light and shadow on her face. She smiled, a little shyly, but with a spark of mischief that involuntarily made me smile back. It was a moment of pure connection when words are no longer needed and looks and gestures speak for themselves. The back seat of the car became our makeshift refuge. She made herself comfortable. Her posture was both relaxed and thoughtful. We chatted about small things, laughing and enjoying the fact that we could just be ourselves without any pretenses or expectations. At some point, the conversation died down on its own, giving way to something deeper. Like a warm wave, a strange mixture of joy, excitement, and intimacy washed over us both. I carefully moved closer, trying not to ruin this fragile moment. She didn't mind. On the contrary, her eyes told me more than words could. I took a few more photographs, capturing her genuine smile, the slight movement of her hand, and that unique moment when a person completely relaxes and becomes himself. It was all so natural, so sincere that it seemed to me as if I had witnessed something truly unique. Time seemed to stand still as we stayed there, simply enjoying the silence and the occasional sounds of cars passing by. It was a rare opportunity to feel a connection that went beyond the ordinary. We didn't say anything, but this silence seemed to be the most honest and fulfilling conversation of all. When it was over, she sighed, looking back at me with a smile. "It was amazing," she said, still trying to catch her breath and organize her thoughts. "I can't even describe how special this was. Something completely new to me. It will stay with me for a long time." We sat there for a long time, exchanging views, thoughts, and perhaps something that cannot be expressed in words. Everything around us was filled with quiet harmony, as if we had found a way to stop time in order to live this moment to the end. Finally, she got out of the car and covered herself with her coat. Turning around, she smiled at both boys and curtsied a little. She then looked at me for a while and then slowly climbed into the car and closed the door. I could tell by her face and posture that she was trying to understand what she had just done and realize how much she enjoyed it. As I walked over and climbed inside, I noticed that she was being very quiet. Then, as if a switch had been turned on, she turned to me, unmistakable excitement in her eyes. I can't believe how much I enjoyed it. I really liked it, especially the part where the two guys were watching it. Is it really me? I'm not sure she was expecting an answer, but I gave her the answer anyway. Seriously. I always knew that I was sexy. I always thought I was bordering on nymphomania because I really enjoy sex. But this, even in my craziest moments, even in college, I would never have dreamed of having sex in broad daylight in a shopping mall parking lot where everyone could see me and enjoying every minute of it. Even in your wildest dreams, what's next? How far are you willing to go? Do you want more attention or more sex? Or both? I'm sure we could find someone willing in no time. I have one more outfit. Let's find a place where I can change and show off a little more of myself. And then we'll see where it takes us. Now I'm in such a mood that I'm ready for almost anything. There was a city park not far from the shopping center, and I headed there. I quickly found the restrooms and parked right in front of them. Gail grabbed her bag from the back seat and went into the women's room to change. I looked around the park. The paths led in different directions, and there were benches every few meters. Great place. When Gail came out, she was wearing a bright blue tight miniskirt. She was wearing 3-inch heels and a loose, sheer white blouse that was unbuttoned halfway through. If she bent over even a little, she would have completely exposed her breasts. Damn, she was so hot. Well, is that impressive enough? Super hot, just incredible. Glad you like it. Let's go for a walk. The park was almost empty except for a small playground next to the parking lot. There was a path around the central lawn area where teenagers played frisbee. A couple was walking their dog, and 3 or 4 people were sitting on benches, reading newspapers and enjoying the warm sun. I noticed Gail starting to get excited. She was slightly tugging at the hem of her miniskirt, showing off her lower buttocks. I took a photo, and she turned around, smiling at the sound of the camera. Smiling even wider, she lifted the front edge of her skirt and posed. Passion was visible in her eyes. She became hotter every minute. I was going to take advantage of it. I just didn't know where how, or when. We continued our walk through the park, enjoying the silence and fresh air. In one of the most remote parts of the path, where the trees formed a dense canopy hiding the bench from the main alley, a man was sitting. He was alone, immersed in reading a newspaper. He looked to be about 45 years old. Fit, with a light tan, he looked like a man who spends a lot of time outdoors. His outfit, shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals, was perfect for a warm, sunny morning. "Mind if we join?" I asked, coming closer. The man looked up from the newspaper and looked at us. He seemed a little surprised, but nodded politely. "No, of course, sit down. The park is big, but such places are always more comfortable when you share them with someone," he answered, folding the newspaper. Gail and I sat down on a nearby bench. She chose a seat opposite the man, adjusting her sandals as she walked. As she bent over slightly, the hem of her light skirt rose slightly, exposing her knees. The man seemed a little embarrassed by this, but quickly looked away. Gail and I exchanged smiles. She was always amused by people's reactions to her natural grace. "Wonderful morning, isn't it?" I started the conversation, trying to diffuse the situation. "Yes, wonderful," the man replied, clearly trying to focus on the conversation rather than Gail's presence. She, in turn, smiled naturally and entered into a dialogue, telling how long she had loved this park and how nice it was to find such secluded corners here. The conversation flowed easily, as if we were old acquaintances. I took the camera out of my bag and turned to the man. "Do you mind if I take a couple of photos for memory? Gail and I just love collecting pictures of moments like these." The man was a little embarrassed, but nodded. "Yes, sure. The main thing is that I don't get caught in the frame. I'm not very photogenic." "What are you talking about?" Gail said, smiling sincerely. "On the contrary, you will fit perfectly into the atmosphere." She sat a little closer to the man, straightening her blouse as she walked. Her movements were light and casual, as if she didn't even notice how she was attracting attention. I started filming, trying to capture the sun's rays breaking through the trees and Gail's warm smile. The man, a little stiff at first, relaxed over time. We laughed when Gail started waving her arms comically, imitating a model on the runway. He even jokes. If I had known that I would find myself in such a fun company, I would have taken a camera with me. It turned out even better than I expected. This was completely new territory far beyond our previous games. I had enough pictures of her in a variety of sexual positions to last me a decade. I wondered how far she was willing to go. "Get her hair out of her face," I said. The man gently brushed the hair away from Gail's face, revealing a concentrated expression that emphasized her fascination with the process. Another person walked along the path nearby. Slowing his pace, he stopped to watch with interest what was happening. His gaze expressed a mixture of surprise and admiration. Looking at me, he smiled, clearly appreciating not only the situation itself, but also my participation in it. "Incredible. Did you train her like this yourself, or has she always been like this?" he asked with slight joking, clearly trying to diffuse the situation. I smiled slightly in response. "Both. So if you want to join, don't waste time. I think she will be happy." After a moment's hesitation, he took a step forward, clearly deciding to accept the offer. Coming closer, he looked with interest at Gail, who, without further ado, began to pay attention to the new participant. The atmosphere around was charged with emotions bordering on admiration and delight. Gail's every gesture looked so natural and graceful that she seemed to be completely enjoying what was happening. At that moment, I continued to shoot, trying to capture all the liveliness and expressiveness of this scene. One of the most successful photographs was the moment when the bright emotions on Gail's face and the general mood of the entire environment combined into an ideal composition. All this was not created just for the camera. It was the real sincerity of the moment, which is rarely possible to capture. She looked at me, and I knew it was time to end the relationship. "Come on, let's go. We'll be late." She quickly pulled herself together, stood on shaky legs with a little help, and waved to the two guys as I dragged her to the car. "Oh my God," she exclaimed. "Did I just do what I think I did?" I'm such a girl of easy virtue, a damn slut. That was great. I sat her in the passenger seat and allowed her to button only the bottom button of her blouse, leaving her breasts clearly visible. I took a couple of quick, candid shots while standing next to the car. She pulled me closer, grabbing my belt. There was not a soul around, and the situation became tense to the limit. Her gaze was filled with passion, and her touch was confident and sensual. At that moment, something so personal and frank arose between us that it is difficult to describe it in words. Subsequently, I kept in my memory her smile and our common moments, which will remain only between us. Absolutely fucking amazing. After going through the experience at the mall and the park, I wasn't sure what she would do next. I would never have believed that she was capable of what she had already done. This is a true story, and it is mine. We went straight to the hotel from the park. She was so excited that she was shaking and chattering incessantly as she undressed and turned on the shower. It was so damn incredible. I have never received such emotions in my life. Look at me. I am nothing more than an overworked, sexy prostitute. All I can think about now is what sexual act I will do next. I want more and more. I'm so addicted. What have you done to me? I just gave you the space and permission to be who and what you really want to be, to fulfill whatever sexual fantasies you've been hiding your whole life. You know that I do not judge you or your actions. I think it means you feel safe and trust that I won't let anything bad happen. She stopped and looked at me, sticking her chest out. She looked almost defiant and was completely unaware of her arousal. I started this flirting for a little fun because I found you so damn sexy. I also wanted to make sure you were happy and did a good job. You have become a key part of the success of our company. But you turned out to be much smarter than I thought, and you got to know me better than I knew myself. You just let me be myself and played me like a fiddle. You have masterfully orchestrated every step, leading me along the path of my desires to my own destruction. No pressure. I will be very obliged to you for this, because now, being a plump girl of easy virtue, like yesterday, I am happier than I have been in a long time. I can't wait to find out what happens next and see how far I'm willing to go. But now I need to get myself in order. While she was in the shower, I took the opportunity to copy the SIM card in the camera in case things didn't go as planned at home. I noticed that I took 595 pictures. She came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, her hair still wet. Gail threw the towel on the floor, climbed into bed, and was asleep before I even realized what she was doing. She passed out instantly. I read a little and also lay down next to her. A long and very successful day, very successful. I also quickly fell asleep. The next morning, we packed our things and loaded them into the car. We had a long drive back, and I wanted to leave early in case we needed to make stops. Gail wore a gray summer dress that buttoned down the front, not that it mattered. The top two buttons and the bottom three were undone, and it was quite obvious that she was wearing nothing else. As she walked to the car, her body moved and swayed. What a body she had. Everyone who came into view stopped and looked. She was in her element. We got on the highway and drove about 35 minutes when she said she needed to go to the ladies' room. I checked the gas and decided it was time to fill up. I noticed a sign for a truck lot and pulled off the highway and came to a gas pump. Gail got out and started gassing up the car, letting her dress flutter in the wind. The wind was strong enough to unfasten all the buttons except the one in the middle, which seemed to be stuck. She didn't seem to mind at all that every time the wind picked up, the dress would fly completely off her body, revealing everything she had. She even seemed to enjoy putting on a show for everyone. I took amazing photos where the dress was almost horizontal in the wind. When she finished, she walked towards the building. I decided to move the car to the truck lot and wait. There were about 10 trucks parked in the parking lot, but there were no drivers in the cabs. As she walked, the wind constantly lifted her dress, exposing her long legs and breasts, which bounced in time with her steps. I took a few pictures as she walked into the ladies' room. She was a real exhibitionist. The drivers watched Gail's show with great interest through the cafe window. Whistling, shouting, and teasing came from them. I went to pay for fuel and struck up a conversation with several of them. "You're damn lucky, mate," said one of the drivers. I just smiled and nodded. "Is she as good in bed?" asked another. "Even better, and not only in bed," I answered. "She likes exhibitionism and sometimes even more. I never know what will happen if she actually starts. Just give her attention and encourage her. I can't promise anything, but she might surprise you. With a body like this, I would love to make her smile," added the third driver, who weighed about 130 kilograms. "Or, better yet, scream with pleasure." "You don't have the equipment for this, Starkey," the other driver remarked, which led to more banter and jokes until Gale left the ladies' room. In an instant, everyone became silent. Here she is with a dress in her hands and completely naked. "Hello, boys. I accidentally heard your comments." "You're amazing, honey." "Thank you, sir. They probably tell you this often." "I think it happens." "I like the way you look." "Well, guys, what should we do?" "I showed you mine. Now it's your turn." "Follow us, darling," Starkey said, "and we will show you what you want." I could tell she was ready. Her neck was red, and she had that look on her face that you get when she really, really wants to be fucked hard. I wasn't sure she knew what she would get if she went down this path, but I was there to keep it from getting out of hand. She set the rules early. "This is how it happens. I can touch and so can you. Maybe play with your head a little or a little to get off. But no one can have sex with me. This is intended for the cameraman." "Follow us, dear," said Starkey, "and we will give you what you want." I stayed back to take pictures as she walked into the shower, and these guys were taking off their clothes. Most of them were quite thick. Starkey approached Gale first. "Here," he said, "I saved this for you." Gale slowly looked around at the assembled men, her gaze lingering on each of them as if she was trying to read their thoughts. The atmosphere in the room was tense, but at the same time filled with anticipation. The men's faces reflected different emotions from slight embarrassment to obvious admiration for her confidence. She took a step forward, her movements calm and graceful. She extended her hand, gently touching one of them, her gesture both confident and reassuring. A slight smile appeared on her face, which indicated that she knew how to manage what was happening. Her energy seemed to unite everyone present, and it seemed that they began to move synchronously to the rhythm that she set. Her confident actions and demeanor created a feeling of complete involvement in the moment. The rest of the men, slightly confused, but at the same time delighted, carefully watched her movements. Some tried to maintain eye contact, others simply enjoyed the atmosphere, which she made almost magical. Her smooth movements, gestures, smiles, all this created a special tension that seemed palpable. She maintained that fine line between paying attention to each of them and the overall atmosphere in which they were all united. Gale exuded confidence that left no room for doubt. Her actions were deliberate, but at the same time spontaneous, as if she were improvising, but doing it with absolute precision. The men surrounding her gradually began to feel more relaxed. She managed to make each of them feel like they were part of what was happening. Her demeanor, the way she spoke, her movements, everything said that she knew how to create an environment where everyone could feel comfortable and involved. Over time, the tension began to give way to a feeling of lightness. Her actions were consistent. She paid attention to everyone, as if trying to create a special connection with each of those present. The atmosphere gradually became more relaxed, but at the same time retained the mystery and specialness that she so skillfully created. The men around her watched with interest, some even with admiration. Gale seemed to control the invisible energy that filled the space. She seemed completely confident in what she was doing, and it fascinated them all. Every moment was filled with emotion, but at the same time remained within the framework of mutual respect and agreement. "Wait a minute, buddy. Let's make her more comfortable." Two guys supported her so that she could sit more comfortably on a bench in the far corner of the room. She clearly looked tired, and it was clear that she needed a little rest. One of them, raising his hands high in a gesture of friendly support, remarked, "Come on, rest a little. You've already worked so hard." With these words, he stepped aside, and the second one jokingly handed her a bottle of water, as if it were a winner's cup. We're not monsters after all. Someone from the company added with a smile, dispelling the remaining tension in the air. Starkey, known for his good-natured jokes, also decided to contribute. He sat down next to her and began to tell one of his endless stories about childhood adventures. With every word he said, the tension in the room melted, and soon laughter filled the space. Her smile became natural, and her eyes no longer showed fatigue. The guys took turns trying to maintain her mood. Some told jokes, some acted out skits, and some simply silently watched so that she would not feel out of place. Starkey again took the initiative, offering to discuss her recent project. "You did everything really well. Your camera is simply top-notch. Maybe you can show how you work with it." He nodded at the equipment standing nearby. The guys began to look at the equipment with curiosity, joking and discussing which of them could cope with such a complex process. Starkey even tried to adjust the tripod, but in the end only caused a new wave of laughter with his clumsiness. "Okay, I'm clearly not good with technology," he admitted cheerfully, returning the camera to its place. Everyone decided it was time to call it a day. "That's enough for today, guys," one of them said. "We all need a little rest." She smiled back, showing that she completely agreed with this. Having gathered, the group began to disperse, pleased with the warm and sincere meeting. She was left alone for a moment to put her thoughts in order, but there was still a feeling of lightness and mutual understanding in the air. "Of course, I used to do professional photography, but cargo transportation pays better." He carefully and professionally examined the camera. "It's quite a complex installation. I'm ready. Do you want one of you two to turn it on?" "That's an idea." "Cool, never done this before. Can I get copies?" "Of course, if she's okay." "Come on, dude." I pulled down my pants to feel freer and sat down on the bench. Gail, her knees raised to her chest, was ready for anything. We moved in unison, feeling incredibly close and involved. The atmosphere was complemented by the sounds of the camera and our interaction, accompanied by comments and support from others. Gail seemed completely immersed in the moment. Her emotions were genuine. The guys stood nearby, encouraging us and sharing the atmosphere of freedom and spontaneity. Each of them sincerely admired what was happening. At some point, I stopped to catch my breath, wiped my face with a towel, and cleaned myself up. When it was all over, I felt a wonderful mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. The guys, noticing this, nodded at me with a smile. They began to pack their things, leaving us alone. I took my camera to capture the memories of the day, and Gail and I smiled at each other, feeling like it was a special moment that would be remembered. "Thanks, dude. Shoot me an email, and I'll send you pictures if that's okay with her. If not, I will send you the ones I can." Starkey reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and handed it to me. "It's all there, man. Thanks for the show. You were right. She's fucking amazing." I took a warm, damp towel and another dry one and began to dry Gail's face and body. She finally calmed down enough to speak. She was hoarse. "Hey, that was amazing, but I'm not really sure what happened. I kind of got lost in this somewhere. I know that I got a lot of emotions, and I remember how much pleasure it gave. I know you had sex with me, but it's mostly a blur. How many guys were watching us? What the hell did I do?" She sat down on the bed, looking ahead in confusion. "Everyone looked at me and supported me, but only you were so close, so real," she said thoughtfully, trying to collect her thoughts. "You did incredible," I replied, trying to cheer her up. "Every one of them was friendly, that's true. I can show you later if you want." "You know, I'm starting to wonder, is this all normal for me?" She smiled nervously. "Well, this is not a question of the norm," I said, trying to explain. "People do different things for their own reasons. The main thing is that it brings you joy. The world is quite diverse, and such events have been around for a long time." "Really? Like in clubs where they exchange partners? Wow, I didn't even know about that. I'll have to take a look sometime." She perked up. "Give me a little time to freshen up, and we can go home. I feel like I'll need a good rest." She stood up carefully, but immediately grabbed her head. "Oh, I don't feel well." "Take your time," I said, walking over to support her. "We can wait as long as necessary." However, suddenly she felt very bad, and she staggered, with difficulty holding her head down. "It's okay, the main thing is to calm down," I said quietly, staying close to help. After a couple of minutes, she sat down and rose with difficulty to her shaking legs. Very slowly, she reached the shower and stood under the hot water for a long time. I took a few photos there too, including one with a sign in the shower advertising men's shaving cream and another with the words, "Shower rooms access for men only." What's next? I couldn't even imagine. New adventures at home. I would never have believed that she was capable of this, and she wanted more, much more. We improvised as we went along. This is a true story, and it is mine. Over the last couple of weeks since our desert adventure, she had been talking about trying something with multiple partners and asked if I could organize something small but discreet for us. We stayed late at work, everyone had already left. She sat on the edge of my desk, casually swinging her leg, and I couldn't help but notice her playful mood. She undid the top button of her blouse, considering her words, and carefully watched my reaction. Her cheeks were slightly pink, and she seemed to be barely holding back a smile. "Okay," she said, looking up at me. "How about this plan, keeping it small and discreet? I will invite two couples that I know personally who love sex with other partners. They understand the importance of respecting boundaries and will follow your example. If you decide to just observe, that's absolutely normal. No one will mind. True, I think they will not miss the opportunity to flirt with you a little, seeing how charming you are. I've already done a little more than that, thanks to those kind truckers. I'd like to know how far I'm willing to go. I know I can be a complete prostitute if I let myself. And you know it. Can you arrange it? And how soon? I can probably organize something by the weekend or early in the week. This will be perfect. Greg's going to stay with his mother in Indiana for a week, and I won't have to lie about where I'm staying. If all goes well, I really don't want any time restrictions. I may never have another opportunity to test myself. With complete freedom. When this issue was finally resolved for her, a feeling of relief and at the same time vague tension hung in the air. She slid off the table, her movements both light and decisive. Coming closer, she stopped opposite me, her eyes sparkling with some kind of playful sparkle. It was that moment when words are no longer needed, when everything happens by itself. She touched my hand, almost weightlessly, but this touch was enough to break all the boundaries that we had built for so long. Her fingers lingered on my palm, squeezing a little tighter, as if confirming that this was happening in reality. I felt the tension in the room become palpable, as if space itself was closing in around us. At some point, she found herself back on the table. Her movements were full of trust, and her gaze was tender and passionate at the same time. I came closer, feeling something flaring up between us that could not be described in words. The whole world around seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us, immersed in this incredibly intimate moment. We moved towards each other as if we were one, acting in complete agreement and harmony. Everything that was happening seemed both incredibly fast and surprisingly natural. Every gesture, every look said more than words could. When it was all over, she leaned back, breathing heavily, but her face lit up with a smile, and cheerful lights danced in her eyes. She laughed softly, releasing any remaining tension. Her laughter was so contagious that I couldn't help but smile back. We sat next to each other, silently enjoying the moment, as if we had just discovered something new and important. We're just incredible, you and I. It seems like we can't resist a single hint or sexual innuendo from each other without making it happen. I have to say, this is the best, most frequent, and amazing sex of my life. I hope we never get to the point where we don't want to do this anymore. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to slow down. We cleaned up the mess on my desk and headed home. In the parking lot, she kissed me passionately. No fair. "Just so you remember me," she got into the car and drove away. The next day, I called my friend in the East. After the usual greetings and explaining why I needed them, He gave me some local names and numbers to contact. To be honest, I didn't really know anyone here. Most of my friends were on the other coast. After several conversations, I selected two couples who lived relatively close to meet in person and discuss. I invited them to come over on Thursday after work to discuss plans for the weekend. When they arrived, I was amazed by their appearance. My friend was right. The men were in pretty good shape, and the women were just made for sex. The women wore just enough clothing to be considered decent in public, short tops, miniskirts, and little else. Brandy and Norm, both in their late 30s, were typical representatives of California beach culture, blonde, toned, and tanned. Miko and Bill, a little older, in the early 40s, were a mixed-race couple who inherited the best of their African and Asian ancestry. Bill was a little overweight, but it suited him. And judging by the bulge in his pants, he was incredibly well-equipped. We had a drink, a snack, and I outlined the situation. All of them were from the sex industry and had appeared in front of the camera more than once, so there were no issues with video filming or serious sexually transmitted diseases. They even brought the results of tests done the day before. Just so that I don't see myself in a store or on the internet later, Bill warned. I won't like it, because we are paid far from the usual rate. This is strictly an insurance video, I assured. Okay, sounds normal. If she's as good as you say, I might even forget about paying. In addition, they were all avid sex addicts and invited us to visit several clubs with different levels of the dirty meter, from quite decent to downright depraved. Brandy mentioned that she and Norm had initiated newbies into this type of sex, both men and women, and that she would be able to provide comfort and pleasure for Gail. I said I was looking forward to watching it. Miko and Bill added that they are always happy to meet new people and will not be too pushy. Miko said that she and Bill met at a sex party where they came with different partners. Once I was in bed with Bill and his enormous dignity, I couldn't think about anything else. The next day I called him, and since then we have been together in the bedroom, clubs, or on the set. Are you sure she's ready for this? Or will he still be nervous? She was gradually preparing for this. We've discussed everything well, and I think she wants to try it. If she is in the right mood, she will surprise us all. She is able to have sex with complete liberation. We just need to create the right atmosphere for her. She knows why you're here. She just needs to get used to the idea that it's expected. She's already had sex in public, been exposed in public, and been to nudist clubs, so this shouldn't be a problem. The main barrier is multiple partners and the presence of spectators. We'll be fine, Norm assured. Just let us know if we do anything wrong. We set a time for 5:30 on Saturday and then said goodbye with tight hugs, long tongue kisses, and sensual touches to get to know each other's bodies better. You're a great size, boy, Brandy said. I can't wait to play with him. Just remember, we've already done this together, I reminded them as they left. No problem, they answered in unison. Everything will be like the good old days. Gail arrived around 4:30 to help prepare the food. She was a real master in the kitchen, and together we got it done pretty quickly. At about 6:30, Brandy, Norm, Miko, and Bill arrived. It seemed like they had deliberately coordinated the time to arrive at the same time. Norm and Bill wore slacks and shorts, while Miko and Brandy wore loose dresses. As Brandy walked, it was obvious that she was not wearing a bra. I couldn't take my eyes off it, and neither could Gail. When I looked at her face, she was smiling as if to say, "Easy there, Tiger, you can enjoy this later." I noticed that Gail was also glancing at the bulge in Bill's pants. It was as if there were 3 pairs of socks. I poured everyone some pretty strong drinks, introduced everyone to each other, and stood back to see what was going to happen. The women chatted as if they had been friends for years, with giggles and playful glances in the men's direction. Gail drank alcohol quickly, which gave away her mood. She was a little nervous, but clearly excited about the upcoming evening and did not want stupid restrictions to hold her back. I noticed that she touched herself often. At one point, Miko nudged Brandy as Gail lightly massaged her breasts. They both smiled. Miko and Brandy just made sure her glass was always full, which further removed her internal restrictions, although she didn't need much encouragement anyway. Needless to say, the evening went very well. The food was great, and everyone was doing well, especially Gail. It was Miko who melted the ice. "I need a swim," she blurted out, walked out to the pool, took off her dress, and dived into it. It was the first time I saw her amazing ass, incredible body, and all over her tan. Without even flinching, Brandy rushed forward with Gale and, laughing and noisily, threw Gale inside clothes and all. She also stripped down, revealing another fully developed, tanned and toned body. She dove after it. The laughter and squeals were enough to make the guys take off their clothes and dive in too. By the time I reached the edge of the drinks pool, Brandy and Miko had successfully removed Gale's clothes and tossed her onto the diving board. The game was in full swing, if you'll excuse the expression. There was a lot going on in the pool, so I jumped in too. Bill hugged Miko, holding her closer and expressing tender feelings. Miko and Norm exchanged deep glances, as if playing an invisible game. Norm stood next to Brandy, hugging her tenderly, and she returned his gestures with a smile. They were all in a relaxed, friendly mood, enjoying the atmosphere around the pool. I walked up to Gail and kissed her lightly, to which she responded warmly, smiling and expressing affection. I helped her get comfortable on the edge of the pool and gave her a little foot massage, trying to relax her after a long day. She looked completely happy when I touched her legs and smiled, enjoying the moment. All those present were in the mood for a pleasant holiday and simply spent time in a relaxed atmosphere. The evening by the pool continued, and every moment was permeated with the joy of communication and an atmosphere of complete comfort. All this happened against the backdrop of quiet music, creating a calm and relaxing mood. It was obvious that everyone was enjoying each other's company, and it promised to be a special evening full of fond memories. Brandy and Gale soon decided to swim for a bit, laughing and splashing each other with water. I joined them, enjoying the lightness of the moment. Smiles, laughter, and jokes filled the air, and everyone felt truly happy. She wrapped her arms around me, holding me close, and sudden passion flared up between us. We got lost in the moment, letting our instincts guide our actions, and soon found ourselves in each other's arms, forgetting everything else. Energy and passion overwhelmed both of us. We moved in the same rhythm, feeling each other's warmth and forgetting about everything that surrounded us. She screamed, reaching the peak of emotion, and the tension that was between us found its release. Others joined us, adding to the moment a sense of closeness and unity that words could not describe. The atmosphere on deck was tense and filled with desire. Complete freedom reigned in this space. Each of us gave free rein to our feelings, enjoying this rare moment of sincerity and true unity. Gail exhaled loudly, asking for more. She longed for continuation, and everyone who was nearby was ready to respond to her call. One by one, we continued to support her passion, allowing the moment to continue unabated. I moved closer to Gail and gently touched her lips. The atmosphere was tense, and all the participants were in harmony with each other. Bill and Norm were doing their own thing, and Gail was clearly enjoying the moment. There was real intimacy between us, which was expressed in touches and mutual support. Each of us participated in what was happening, sharing our warmth and care. In the end, we all climaxed at the same time, as if we were one. The sensations were so strong that they left us exhausted, and a feeling of satisfaction and completion was in the air. Just fucking amazing. We all collapsed in a heap. Bill winked at me and whispered, "She is such a damn girl of easy virtue and a real debauchee. We're just getting started, man, and I can't wait to see what's next." Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.